So Jim, maybe would you like to talk a little bit about?
Yeah, I'll be happy to start the conversation off.
Thank you.
So this particular week has been everything that I hoped it would be. Very exciting, wonderful new science that has come out with many missions that have occurred over the last 10 years or so, both from a NASA perspective and internationally. The community is very tight, very focused, and we have some exciting opportunities to visit sites on the moon all over the place, both near side and far side, that are just beckoning for us to go. And we're in an era for which we have an administration that's very supportive, that has been talking about through the Space Council that a moon is now a more important objective for us to concentrate on. And we're waiting for the President's budget to be submitted to Congress in the February timeframe to see how that might actually come to fruition over the next several years. So we are in that process of what I would say getting our act together, and it's coming together quite nicely. So this will, I believe, start now a series of new concepts and new approaches that helps us focus in on the science and objectives. And as we can see, there's a lot to do. This also is quite important from not just exploration. The science element of that is the moon has always been a very important object, close object for us to get to, and there's so many things to learn. Mission studies that we want to be able to perform in the next several years to get ready for the planetary decadal. We're right at the midterm of the current one, but we have to get ready for the next one. And we want to be able to really delineate both the near-term goals that we can execute with our international partners and our commercial opportunities, but also look at a roadmap or a sustainable program that gets us into the next decade and continues on with the exploration. We have to be able to do that. You look back in the past, we've had what I would say is a constant program with many highs along the way, and we want to be able to raise that bar and make a really concerted effort to create a program that is sustainable for many years, that allow us to continually leverage the closeness of the moon and the science that we can do. So it's an exciting time, and I think this will be looked back on as a seminal conference that helped us organize our ideas in this manner.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate that. Ben, from the human exploration side, perhaps.
Always hard to follow, Jim. Just a few more things to add. I mean, this has been really, really great couple of days, and I've been sitting there, apart from just listening to the science, trying to think about it from the HEO perspective. In the immediate short term, we have our workshop on how the gateway, if that is the next step for human exploration, how the gateway enables science, and several of the talks here have hit upon things we've already identified that the gateway could be used. So I can see a lot of synergy there. But also from the SKG sense, even though vast majority of what was discussed here was certainly science-driven, it's clear that if we can actually start to get missions to the lunar surface again, we will have an abundance of riches, both scientifically and from data to help close SKGs. And then I would say finally, from the humans to the lunar surface again, once that starts to be clarified, what kind of architecture do we have? Things that have come up, the COMSAT, the importance of COMSAT, how many times that came up. So when we start to get infrastructure associated with humans back to the surface, that's going to be hugely enabling to the scientists too. The importance of mobility, lots of maps went up there, lots of asterisks on maps, and a lot of them are quite close together and represent quite different science. So a bit like we did a couple of years now ago for them on the Mars side when we looked at the concept of an exploration zone. I think that's equally valid to the moon, and so when we start to understand what the mobility capabilities are going to be for crews on the surface, I think that work will actually help, together with all the work we've discussed here over the last couple of days, to think about where are interesting regions where you can do the greatest breadth and depth of science on the lunar surface with people.
Thanks, Ben. Sarah, would you like to say a few words?
So I actually think that Ben said it great on the first day of this conference when he said, you know, the moon is interesting everywhere, right? And I think that we have seen that over the course of the last couple of days, that the moon, in fact, is interesting everywhere. I'm very heartened to see that there are so many ideas about places we could go, and places that we can evolve to, places we can go now with simple, easy landers, and things that are stretch our goals that we can evolve to as the community evolves. And I'm really excited to see all of the commercial folks who came today. This week. I want to thank you guys for showing up. I hope that we started a lot of yeah. I hope we started some great conversations between our communities, and that you guys continue to show up and participate in our conferences and workshops and become a part of our community. It's a fairly great community, and so I'm happy to have you guys join us.
Yep. Yeah, Clive, you
Oh, me? I'm spent. I got nothing. No, but I'll make an effort. I said before at the beginning of the conference, we're going back to the moon again. What's different this time? And we've heard a lot of the differences this time from previous attempts to do it. And it's the fact that we have, putting on my professorial hat now, we now have a new avenue for our graduates to get good jobs. All right? Now, that's very fundamental aspect of it, but it's in an exciting new area that is growing, that is off-planet. I mean, are we going to capture the imagination of the next generation or what? And I also want to point out, talking of the next generation, the panel that was up here before us, holy crap, they were good. Yeah. Thank you very much. I am now contemplating retirement. But I think that we've a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of opportunity, and the important thing is when we leave here, we carry that enthusiasm on and we keep it going. We evolve the report so it becomes more inclusive. And that's something that struck me during the Q&A, the inclusivity that needs to be inclusive. So as I said, this is going to be an evolvable document. We got a great start, but there are some things that, even with the brain trust that's here, that may have been missed that we need to include as well, so that there are options as they become available. Not that this is a must do, or this is number one, this is number two, but there are options because the moon is an exciting place. Yes, we've been there with humans. Check box. But we haven't been there, done that. We haven't even started yet. So it's time to get back there and then start to use the moon to go to other places with humans, but also use the moon to understand our solar system. Thank you.
Thanks, Clive. I want to say a few words, and then we're going to open it up to questions and last thoughts. I want to start with a quote from our survey PI, Bill Botke. It's not just any moon, it's our moon. Yeah. This has been our, I love that quote, it's been our cosmic companion for something on the order of, well, over 4 billion years, something like that. And to not go there again, to not land on the surface is insane. We haven't done it, U.S. in any case, for a very long time. We need to do it, and we're going to do it differently this time. We're going to do it with our international partners, and I think that that's just fantastic. I also was very heartened by the commercial presence here. I mean, we had 4 companies on that first panel, and then I think I've told most of you, just within the last week, Clive and I got a slew of emails in asking if commercial companies could have a slot. And as you saw late afternoon, we made that slot for them. So we had 8 companies represented here.
More than that.
Yeah, that's right. There were more, eight on the panels. And so, are all of them going to be successful? Probably not. You know, there's a lot of risk, but the thing is they're taking that risk, and they're gonna see a lot of upside in terms of dollars. I really hope they will. We at NASA and we, the scientific community, are going to see a tremendous amount of upside in terms of the frequency of getting payloads to the lunar surface. I predict we're not going to have to wait 45 years ever again. Yeah. So anyway, and then I want to say a couple of words about SURVEY. This is something that we, as an institute, are keenly interested in. We spoke with Jim about this ahead of this workshop, and he's very supportive of this. Clive and I actually co-chaired a little workshop with the Google Lunar X Prize teams, what about 6 years ago?
Yeah.
6 or 7 years ago, maybe something like this. So there's a lot of long-standing interest in it. I get a sense, I can't be sure that this is right, but I get a sense that we're on the cusp of something great. And I hope that more than one of you of these commercial companies are successful. There's a lot of things also. Clive was talking about what's different now. There's a whole lot of things that are different. I mean, we have this wonderful young community. I feel just as he does that, boy, these young people that we were working with here, they're so great. We could retire right now and let them take over, and they would do just fantastic. But there's also been a lot of other changes. I mean, we have this amazing lunar reconnaissance orbiter that's been around the moon for 9 years and counting now, I believe, that has completely changed our understanding of the moon. How lucky is that? You know, just fantastic. We certainly thank HEOMD for getting it started and SMD for keeping it going and adding to that wonderful data repository. I talked about commerce already. We also have some sea changes in technologies that are going to really change the way we explore, both robotically through autonomy, and not to mention all the kinds of detectors that we now have that weren't available even 10 years ago. But also once we do get back with humans, we're going to do it differently. It's not going to be the same as it was 50 years ago. So I think we have one heck of a bright future ahead, and thank you all for coming here to enable it. So anyway, would you like to ask any questions or any comments? Junichi?
Thank you very much for your good organizing. And I comment for the participation of the commercial companies. You are, of course, we are welcome. We welcome the newcomers and new companies. But we should be careful because, of course, until today, there are a lot of the good companies collaborated with scientists to explore the moon planets. So their knowledge and experience becomes high. But the newcomers is just a newcomer. So we science may have a more risk, because risk means sometimes a failure, sometimes a lot of money, and sometimes some companies say that this mission is very cheap. So but as exploration becomes expensive, so that we may lose some exploration opportunity. So that we scientists should press to the NASA, JAXA, ESA. We should make a good and a very tough exploration, and we should grown up with newcomers. So that sometimes scientists now, I'm afraid, exploration is very safe, means there is no failure. But from my experience, lunar and planetary exploration has a every time have a loss, risk. So that we should, scientists press NASA, ESA, JAXA, that we should, NASA, ESA, JAXA should care the newcomers and more lower risk. So that then we can welcome the newcomers. So that we should, scientists do not over-trust our exploration. Exploration is every time risky. That's all.
Thanks, Junichi. Thank you. Any more comments? No? Rick?
I'm sure I'm not alone. Other people probably have found themselves being approached by some of the commercial entities in the past saying, do you have a payload? Do you have something that you could fly? And so something I mentioned the other day in my talk was the possibility of putting a non-flight article in the sense that what you've gone through all the qualifications for with EEE parts and stuff like that for a Class B mission, but rather an engineering model or even something that has been qualified as a COTS, a commercial off-the-shelf instrument, to put on one of these commercial landers and have NASA or some other agency pay for it, get it on the surface and potentially address a science question, maybe not fully, but partially. Is that attractive? Is that something that seems like it would be plausible? If the price tag from a commercial entity is low enough, Jim, could that fit into SMD's budget in some way?
So as I mentioned, indeed, the administration's very supportive and is allowing us to move with a whole variety of new concepts towards our missions and the way we develop and manage them. So we've worked very hard over the last several months alone to roll out a Class D capability, where we back off, the reviews and a number of key decision points are done in different ways that allow rapid progress in mission development and execution, and we take more risk. So I think we're entering an environment for which this is an excellent opportunity for us to continue that approach. And we're looking forward to the President's submission of the budget and seeing how we might be able to take those directions and begin to implement them as soon as we possibly can. We'd start that process this fiscal year to get ready for what would be his view, the administration's view, starting in FY19. So I think it's an excellent environment for us to be considering those kind of actions. Greater risk, meaning lower classification, lighter touch, and hopefully more missions will result from that. We recognize there'll be some failures along the way. We take that. It's very hard for NASA to take on that concept.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's nice to hear you actually. We're working on it. It's nice to hear you say that, Jim.
We're working on it.
From one of the commercial providers' perspectives, we are seeing some of that right now. People are bringing, especially on the technology development side, they're bringing things out that to fly and get experience. So the price point of everything comes down, and the risk then of failure, especially if you can do more stuff here quickly, you get your failures done and out of the way. So yes, we are absolutely seeing that, and I think there will be a drumbeat. You'll start to see that, hopefully, as it comes to the actual missions to the moon. A lot more smaller payloads that are a lot cheaper and can then really help flip the paradigm so that we can do things much more quickly and cheaply, not just on transportation, but also on engineering and the science side as well.
Yeah, and actually to add to that, I mean, we saw lots of presentations with approximately the same predicted flight time for their first or second mission. So we might, if some of these actually do occur when they hope they do occur, we might be spoiled and have more flight opportunities. Then certainly we would have time using the classical RNA process to ask for instruments, propose, select, and build those instruments. So we might be forced to do what Rick says and look at going down a different route of getting engineering models in order to take advantage of actual opportunities to fly things to the lunar surface within a few years, because there could be a lot of those happening at the same time.
Good point.
Okay, so one of the things that has come up, which I think is a very important potential paradigm shift, is the idea of thinking about campaigns rather than missions. And I think of this as sort of the Mars Polar Lander parable, which is, you know, missions where it's a one-off thing, you make one flight article and you roll the dice. And what if, you know, well, you know, how many poles does the moon have? How many poles does Mars have? Why didn't NASA build 6 of those and figured they could lose one on the moon and then get to the poles of the moon and Mars with the same spacecraft? You know, that would be a campaign. If you think of, you're making this investment in all the technology and design and instrumentation, and you can use it in many places. It doesn't have to be just a one-time shot.
I think that's, you know, there's really an important thread there that you're really talking about, campaign. You know, when we look at the example of Mars, Mars has developed over a period of time, a decade and a half or so, an infrastructure, a capability. You know, it's got a communication anchor, and it has the imaging, high-resolution imaging to be able to look for sites and do surveys and do a number of things that we're doing right now, and we're thinking about right now. And I think once some of these elements start coming into place and it's clear, and in anticipation of that, a series of missions that would do a number of things that even are similar, that, you know, in particular laying out the network. We know we want to go there in terms of having certain instruments that are ubiquitous. You know, there's a number of concepts that we talked about. So I think indeed we ought to be thinking in that manner, and we have that opportunity.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks again for the community cross-pollination with the commercials and the science factor, because it's critical in moving forward. But echoing back or reflecting back on public-private partnerships, I was wondering what is going to be the next British East Indian Trading Company or Hudson Bay for the space community? Because as these guys move forward, it's going to rely mainly on the organization structure between the government funding the commercialization efforts, and then you bring back ownership clauses where governments are going to have to go internationally cooperative to figure out ownership rights. But I'd like to hear your thoughts, and I don't know if there's any.
So what we talked about in terms of doing our science and our exploration is one thing, but how we do that in the processes we need to put together are just now starting to emerge. I think we'll see a number of things happen over the next 6 to 8 months that will begin to be put in place that will help facilitate that.
And with regards to what's the next British East India Trading Company, I like that idea. Who knows what that's going to be? Who knows where the gold is going to be on the lunar surface? But the important thing is that we, NASA, other space agencies around the world can be the anchor tenants and pay for some of the rides at the beginning, so that these companies have some guaranteed income, and then in addition to their sponsors, and then can develop these new markets. And once they do, it's going to be good for us, because the price is going to go down, the availability is going to go up, and the amount of geographical coverage on the moon is going to go up as well.
As far as organizational structure, I liken it to like the small sat community and the other space in SMD, where they're looking at public-private partnerships as well. It seems like it's happening across the board, and how to actually set it up would be an interesting.
Yeah, I just want to add to that you've got an opportunity here with campaigns that will then allow the commercials to close a business case. When you have that business case with a cadence of mission, your risk, as Junichi was talking about, will start to go down. So the fact that we're here and communicating effectively already starts to lower that risk. And it starts to open up opportunities, and the process you're talking about will then evolve. And that's what we're looking at, is be part of that evolutionary process, because what a ride, you know?
Okay, David?
I just want to pick up on that thread, and just, I know Jim pulled up the Mars program as the example, but I'd like to, since we're talking about the moon, pull up the moon example. We had the Lunar Orbiter series, we had the Ranger series, we had the Surveyor series. And so one thing that we might want to consider, rather than talking about something individual like Resource Prospector, which is going to be a great mission if it ever does fly, is have a series. Let's talk about the Lunar Surface Lander series and actually commit ourselves to the idea that you need more than one spacecraft on the surface to advance a program.
Amen.
Ben and Jim are not going to say anything.
I'll be happy to say I agree with you. To be able to effectively do that, you know, there's a variety of things that have to occur. You know, we've got to be able to get administration support, we have to get congressional support, we have to be able to map out our plan, and I think we're seeing the starts of that. So.
Yeah. From an exploration side, you're going to have to, before you can do that, you have to determine what are the questions you are trying to answer. Ranger, Surveyor, and Lunar Orbiter had very specific, big unknowns that we needed the data for. We don't have that right now. If the architecture is volatile based for putting humans back, then I would 100% agree with you. I can imagine that to get those, the moon is a big place, that you would need a set of volatile explorers to really answer. But before we can decide what that series of missions should be, we don't yet know what the exact question is of unknowns that we're trying to answer, because we don't know the scale of what we're trying to do yet.
So one thing I haven't heard us talk about that much is, I know Jim has mentioned Class D missions being able to go off and maybe use slightly lower TRL payloads to get at the data sets. One question I have is, has there been much thought, or is it possible for us to tell our commercial partners what data sets we want and allow them to go off and figure out how to get them, and then ultimately we come back and buy the data? I realize this pushes some of the risk down onto our commercial partners, but maybe that then comes at a premium price for that data set. So have we talked about data buys, or how our commercial partners could provide those?
I mean, from an exploration sense, I think this follows on what David just says. Once we know the data we want to get in order, particularly SKG-related data, to help plan human missions, then we would look at all avenues on how to acquire that data, and what you describe is a definite possibility.
You know, that concept's used quite frequently in earth science, and so it is a model, and there's a number of things that could actually work for us in that way. You know, I'd love to be able to say X bucks per kilogram of sample, bring it back, and that's what we'd pay. You know, that would be great. We're not quite there, but you know, could evolve into that.
Yeah, James.
So I was thinking that to make this commercial lunar market work and to make these business cases close in the long term, probably requires an international marketplace with various agencies all providing a combined customer base. So we in ESA have been looking into how we can do that and how we might procure missions on a commercial basis and partner with private sector lander companies and others. And I wondered if anyone had ideas about how agencies at international level could coordinate their plans and procurements of these missions in a way that would maximize the opportunities for these commercial guys.
So all that starts in a couple frameworks. One framework is at the highest level are through bilateral discussions. And we've been, I think, really aggressive internationally to have quite a few bilateral discussions going on. And so they come at a good frequency. It's important that each of the agencies discuss where they are, what their challenges are to the other agencies, so we have a perspective. and where we can find common ground, work together, we really bore down and pursue those. I'm happy to say that indeed those are quite frequent, and perhaps that frequency will increase. Indeed, I think the other part to that is from all the agencies is you know, the stakeholders, the people that have the financial input that our agencies obtain the funding, and then with that direction be able to initiate those programs. And sometimes those cycles of funding don't work well together. And that's one of the reasons why we constantly have to discuss what's happening within the agency, and how that timing for funding and appropriate activities could be leveraged. And when there's overlap, then things happen, then things can be coordinated, then agencies can cooperate. You know, so, but we have to work hard to keep that going and get it in phase better.
So, I would say that ISIG has started that reasonably well. If you look at, for example, the coordination of potential lunar polar missions, or those were all looking at agency missions. So I think ISIG would be one avenue in the short term that you could instigate a discussion on how multiple agencies could work together to help commercial lander things. So that's one side, I would say. And the second is going to be, again, I think everyone's just kind of waiting for the next couple of months to see what happens. And once we have some level of clarity on, you know, NASA's lunar surface human plans, what level of that, what the international component of that is, I think if we've done the ISIG first, that could have laid the groundwork, because then you'll know which agencies are actually invested in human lunar return and potentially then are particularly interested in doing commercial landed missions.
Can I add something to that as well with regards to something Ben brought up with the ISIG missions to the South Pole? International cooperation and development, communications relay. Right there. I mean, that would be so enabling. In the ones that the League looked at when we looked at these coordinating these missions, was we really need a ComSat. Who's going to put the ComSat up there? And there was a lot of discussion in that meeting about communications become really enabling to get better data back from the South Pole. So the ISIG needs to look at, or maybe start to coordinate, an international ComSat relay. And in that respect, then, because it's multilateral, the Chinese comes into play a little bit. But I'm not a politician,
really?
As I've proven many times.
James, another thing to bring up as well is the Pan-European Lunar Science Consortium that when we were still NLSI, helped to start. And we have our annual meeting coming up in May in Toulouse this year. I believe you're going to be there. You're on the SOC, I know, as am I, and Christina. And so I would suggest this would be an excellent topic of conversation there. Maybe we can engineer the agenda that way.
That's a nice idea, thanks.
I want to follow up on the theme of a series or a program from the context of a geophysical network. And I think what this workshop is really emphasized, that if we have a program with multiple components, that brings a lot of strength and resiliency to science in general. And I think that, I was speaking, my personal opinion is that we should probably move a little bit away from the paradigm that we have one shot to do geophysics on the moon and stop at that. This is not how we started doing seismology on Earth 100 years ago. And we have a lot more strength if we do it piecewise. And we have a set of networks based, a subset of a network based on Apollo, and then that informed the next wave in context of a larger scientific goal. And I fear that if we don't move from that paradigm, one shot, we've got to do geophysics now and we're done, we might have to wait another 40 years for the next waves of seismometers on the moon.
Yeah, I don't want to do that either. That'd be disastrous.
What about an international lunar network? There's an idea that we could talk about again. I mean, but seriously, is there a way that
some groundwork that we've done in that area, and we can, and that hasn't gone away.
Right.
Those are a lot of really good thoughts in there that we've done.
But International Lunar Network was still agencies providing the landers.
Correct.
What's different from this mission
Correct.
is what he's asking for in a different way is there a way of essentially funding 10 seismometers that are very capable and essentially are ready to fly on a variety of commercial landers and have their enough are self-contained power and comm, and so you can actually build up the geophysical network because internationally you're prepared to get enough instruments together that can fly on whatever commercial lander agencies are prepared to pay to fly them on.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be the way ILN was originally done.
Correct.
I mean, it's evolved because of new capabilities. That's my point.
But it's a very different change, as this is a panel discussion, it's a very different change to ask for funding for an instrument when you don't actually have a flight for it.
Right.
But
It's a paradigm shift.
there has to be a will at the organizational level to say, okay, this is a long-term strategy. We fly 2 now. We fly another 1 in a year. We fly 2 more in 3 years as part of a larger strategy with everything else that goes into it, magnetism, sample return, everything else. And we continuously get more informed and achieve our objectives piecewise rather than doing it in one shot.
Yeah. NASA's certainly listening to you.
Yes, definitely. Okay, Junichi, you have the final point or question.
Question.
Okay.
As Jim Grinder said, we have a lot of chance, more chance to explore the moon and planets. But I have to say, private company is more severe. More severe means we scientists should not, we cannot provide a good goals, or the good explanation why we scientists need to go to there, why we should have a sample. So we scientists, we should study much more to send our motivation, enthusiasm to the ordinary people, companies, and NASA, JAXA, ESA, so that we should study. That's all.
Communications.
Great. All right, thank you. Any closing comments from the panel members? No? I would like to say a few words in closing for the whole workshop, though. First of all, could I get the tech team to step out of their booth for just a second, please? Yeah, if we could give them a hand. Come on, guys. Come on. Okay. And if I could get all the rest of the survey staff to please stand up. This is really a group effort. It takes a lot to put on something like this. So thank you.
People in the reception area.
Yeah, that's
so
right. The people. Yeah, I think we asked them to come. Yeah. I don't know if the reception folks are. I think they may have left already. I want to give another hand to Ryan, Erica, Sarah, and Jim for the fabulous job that they did. Thank you so much. And then I'd like all of our SOC members to stand up. So Brad Bailey, Ben Bussey, George Kramer's not here, Dave Kring. Sam Lawrence is not here. Sarah? Carly? Where are you, Carly? She left. Oh, she did. She did. Okay. Chip? Sure. Chip? And Ryan Ziegler? Ryan, he left. Okay. Okay. Anyway, they put in a lot of effort into this, so thank you very much. Yeah. And we will be, Clive alluded to this, this is a community effort. When I first met with Jim, and I have to thank Jim for the idea of having this in the first place. He said that he wants the community to speak, and so that's our job, is being that bullhorn so that the community can speak. And so we have your initial input, working with these fine folks over here to my right. We're going to develop a first draft of the report, and we're going to iterate it with you. And so please don't be shy, not that you would, but we want your input. We want to make this the best job possible. We also are going to want ideas on how to move forward in the future. This will hopefully result in an announcement at some point and actual opportunities, but we fully realize that science is not static, that we're going to learn things that are going to point out even more interesting sites. And so, so I see this as restarting a process that started a very long time ago. So, so here's to that process, and here's to going back to the moon. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. This is closed.